The arrival of the alien. Telepath. The great hall of the alien council was filled with silence. The tall pillars glowed faint blue, and the air itself felt heavy with tension. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in their curved seats, their eyes fixed on the center stage. For the first time in centuries, a human was brought before them. Not as a prisoner, not as a slave, but as a subject for a test. The alien telepath stepped forward with slow, measured steps. His body was tall and thin, covered in pale silver skin that seemed to shine under the light. His eyes glowed with a strange blue fire, and every movement he made carried authority. He was known as Zorath, the strongest mind reader in the galaxy. Entire empires had fallen after he touched the minds of kings and leaders. He could see through lies, strip away secrets, and crush weak spirits with a single thought. Yet today, his target was a simple human. The man stood at the center of the hall. Dressed in plain clothes, his hair was dark, his face calm, and his hands rested loosely at his sides. There was nothing special about him. He did not wear armor, he carried no weapon, his eyes did not burn with rage or fear. Instead, he looked at the alien council with quiet curiosity. The council leader, a towering reptilian creature with golden scales, raised his hand. His voice rumbled across the hall. "Zorath, the council commands you. Touch the mind of this human. Show us the truth of their kind." A low murmur filled the seats. Some aliens whispered that humans were fragile, weak, nothing more than animals. Others argued that humans carried a darkness no one could explain. Rumors said their minds were strange, impossible to read, but no one dared to test until now. For if anyone could break a human's mind, it was Zorath. The telepath stopped in front of the human. Towering over him, he narrowed his glowing eyes. "You are calm," he said in a voice that carried both arrogance and curiosity. "Do you not fear me?" The human tilted his head slightly. His lips curved into the faintest smile. "Should I?" he replied softly. Zorath's lips tightened. No one ever spoke to him like that. Most trembled before he even raised his hand. This human did not shake, did not flinch. He simply stood there, as if the moment did not matter. The hall grew colder, the silence became sharper. Even the smallest sound of shifting claws or wings seemed too loud. All eyes were locked on the two figures at the center. It was a moment the galaxy would never forget. Zorath extended his hand. Long silver fingers stretched forward, glowing faintly as psychic energy built around them. The air rippled and the torches around the hall flickered. He placed his hand gently on the human's head. The connection began. At first, Zorath felt nothing unusual. He entered the surface of the human's thoughts, small fragments of memory, childhood, laughter, hunger, ordinary things. But there was something strange. The memories felt sharper, heavier, more vivid than anything he had experienced before. He pressed deeper, eager to show the council that this human was nothing. The human stood still, not resisting, not fighting. His calm expression remained the same, but deep inside his mind, storms were waiting. Zorath's eyes flickered. He saw flashes of fire and war. He heard voices crying in agony. He felt the heavy weight of loss. He stumbled for a moment, but forced himself to continue. The council watched closely, their whispers dying out. Something was happening, something none of them expected. The telepath pushed further, sweat forming along his silver skin. He saw humans standing on battlefields, broken and bleeding, yet refusing to kneel. He saw a mother shielding her child against hopeless odds. He saw explorers stepping into the unknown with nothing but courage. Each memory burned into him like fire. Every emotion struck him like a weapon. The hall was silent. Every alien could feel the tension. They could not see what Zorath saw, but they could see his trembling body. His hand pressed harder against the human's head, his glowing eyes shaking with effort. The human remained calm, his breathing steady. His eyes locked onto Zorath's glowing gaze. As if daring him to go deeper, minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The energy in the hall grew unbearable. The torches flared and the air itself seemed alive. The delegates shifted uneasily, tails twitching, claws scraping, Wings shivering, none dared to speak. Finally, Zorath let out a sharp breath. Pulling back slightly, his fingers trembled. He had only touched the edges of the human mind, and already he felt overwhelmed. Still, his pride burned inside him. He would not stop here. He would not fail in front of the council. The human's faint smile remained. His calm gaze never broke. The telepath gritted his teeth, raised his hand again, and prepared to dive deeper this time. He would push past the surface, past the pain, past the hope, into the very core of what made this creature human. And as the entire hall leaned forward in suspense, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what Zorath would discover. The first touch, the moment Zorath's silver fingers pressed against the human's head, the entire hall seemed to lose its air. A heavy silence fell like a blanket, so thick that even the strongest warriors in the council shifted uneasily in their seats. The torches on the walls flickered, their flames bending inward as if the telepath's power was pulling at them. The psychic connection formed instantly, and Zorath stepped into the unknown depths of a human mind, expecting simplicity, fragility, and weakness. But what he found was something else entirely. At first, the surface memories came easily, fragments of an ordinary life. The human walking through streets of stone and light, sitting with friends, laughing under the open sky, eating meals with family, working with tired hands. Zorath felt a flicker of disappointment. This was nothing to fear, nothing worth the legends whispered in dark halls of alien empires. He almost smiled, ready to pull away and declare victory. But just as he prepared to retreat, a sudden storm rose beneath the surface. A hidden layer waiting to be touched, Zorath was dragged deeper, as if the human mind itself refused to let him go. He stumbled through waves of memories that hit him with a weight unlike anything he had ever felt. He saw fire, roaring cities torn apart by war, soldiers fighting in mud and blood, the echo of cannons, the cries of the dying. He felt the pain of loss, the raw grief of families torn apart. He tried to shield himself, but the emotions cut through his defenses like burning blades. He gasped, his glowing eyes flickering, but he forced himself to stand firm. The council leaned forward. They could not see what Zorath saw, but they could see his body trembling, the glow around his hand faltering. A ripple of unease spread through the delegates. Some whispered that perhaps the human was resisting, but others shook their heads. The human was still standing calmly, his eyes steady, his breathing even. He offered no fight, no struggle, and yet Zorath looked as if he were being crushed under an invisible weight. Inside the mindscape, Zorath pushed further. His pride burned too strongly to allow weakness. He would not be humiliated before the council. He would break this human open and prove that their kind was nothing but fragile animals dressed in flesh. He pressed forward, past the flames, past the grief, past the endless wars, searching for the core, searching for something he could control. But the deeper he went, the more the human mind revealed, and the more unbearable it became. He saw a mother standing before a collapsing building, her body shielding a child as the world fell around them. He felt the terror in her chest and the fierce, unshakable love that drove her to face death without hesitation. He felt her last heartbeat, and the world shook. He staggered but continued. Then he saw soldiers charging into battle, knowing they would not return. He felt their determination, their sacrifice, and their unyielding will to fight even when hope was gone. He could taste the metallic tang of blood and the raw fire of courage. Zorath's silver skin glistened with sweat now. His lips curled back as he clenched his teeth. His fingers shook on the human's head. The calm man still did not move. His faint smile lingered, his eyes steady, as if he knew exactly what the telepath was seeing. Zorath tried to pull back for a moment, but something held him in place. It was not the human's resistance. No, it was the gravity of the memories themselves. The sheer weight of the human spirit would not let him escape. The hall grew restless. The council leader's golden eyes narrowed, and his voice cut through the silence. "What do you see, Zorath?" The telepath did not answer. His lips moved, but no words came. His glowing eyes trembled and his body bent slightly, his knees almost buckling as if the weight of invisible mountains pressed against him. He tried one last time, pushing deeper, and then he felt it. A pulse, a force unlike anything he had known. It was hope, pure and unshakable. It was love that did not break. It was grief that transformed into strength. It was the endless ability of humans to rise again. No matter how many times they fell, Zorath screamed inside the mindscape, the force crashing against his spirit. He staggered back in the hall, his breath sharp and uneven, but still he did not collapse. Not yet. His pride kept him standing, though every nerve in his body begged him to stop. The human finally tilted his head, his calm voice breaking the silence for the first time. "You wanted to know what we are," he said quietly. "Now you begin to see." A shockwave rippled through the chamber. Though no one moved, the council members froze in silence, staring as the strongest telepath in the galaxy trembled before a single, unarmed human. And in that silence, the legend of humanity began to grow. The human spirit unveiled. The moment Zorath pushed deeper into the human's mind, the grand chamber seemed to grow colder. The air thickened as if the walls themselves could sense the weight of what was happening. The flames of the torches bent backward, whispering shadows dancing across the high arches of the alien council hall. All eyes were fixed on the trembling figure of the telepath, his silver hand pressed against the calm human's head, his glowing eyes wide with strain. Zorath had faced kings, warriors, and tyrants before. He had broken warlords in seconds and left emperors crying at his feet. Yet this one ordinary human stood like a mountain, unbroken, untouched, silent. Inside the human mind, the storm grew worse. Zorath was dragged through rivers of memory that cut like blades across his spirit. He saw wars not of one age but of centuries, generation after generation of humans fighting against darkness, sometimes against enemies stronger than themselves, sometimes against the cruelty of nature itself, but never surrendering. The scenes tore through him like a tidal wave. He saw men and women crawling through smoke and fire, their bodies broken but their wills unshaken. He saw explorers leaving behind safe lands, venturing into frozen seas, deserts, and endless skies with nothing but determination. Zorath felt the hunger, the exhaustion, the pain, and yet beneath it all, he felt something more terrifying. He felt resilience. Every time humanity was crushed, they rose again. Every time they lost, they carried the scars but walked forward. Every time they bled, their blood turned into fire that pushed them to keep going. Zorath's hands trembled, his knees bent slightly, sweat dripping down his silver skin. He tried to pull away, but the memories wrapped around him like chains, dragging him deeper into the abyss of the human soul. The council watched in silence, their whispers dead, their claws and wings frozen. For what they saw was impossible. The strongest telepath in the galaxy trembling before a fragile creature from a small blue planet. Zorath saw a soldier with a shattered leg crawling across a battlefield. His comrades already dead, the night filled with fire. He felt the soldier's agony, but he also felt his determination to carry a message to save his people. The man knew he would not survive, yet he dragged himself forward inch by inch, refusing to die until his duty was complete. The memory burned into Zorath's mind like fire against raw flesh. He stumbled, gasping, his chest heaving. He tried to shield himself, to block the waves, but they cut through every defense. Then came another memory. A small child crying in the ruins of a destroyed city, rubble and smoke all around. The child's parents gone. The air heavy with silence. But in the child's eyes, Zorath felt something strange. It was not despair, not emptiness. It was hope. The child picked up a small piece of wood and began to draw in the dust, drawing stars, drawing dreams, drawing tomorrow, even in ruin, even in loss. The child dreamed of something more. That spark of hope pierced Zorath's heart like a blade. He staggered, his glowing eyes flickering. His voice caught in his throat. The human standing in the hall still did not move. His breathing calm, his eyes steady, that faint smile unchanged. It was as if he knew every storm Zorath was drowning in, as if he carried those storms willingly and had long since learned to live with them. The alien council could not understand, but they could see the truth written across the telepath's face. His arrogance was cracking, his pride breaking. Zorath screamed inside the human's mind, but it was not a scream of victory. It was a scream of fear. He had thought the human spirit would be shallow, a pond easy to drain. Instead, it was an ocean, endless and bottomless, filled with storms, pain, love, and hope that refused to die. He tried to retreat, but every time he pulled back, more memories surged forward. Faces of men and women rising from the ashes, voices whispering words of courage, songs sung in the darkness to push away fear, prayers whispered in hopeless nights that still gave birth to dawn. The weight of it pressed down on Zorath like the gravity of a collapsing star. His silver skin cracked with strain. His hand shook violently. His knees finally buckled. Forcing him half down, the council gasped, their voices trembling in disbelief. Never had they seen Zorath weaken. Never had they seen him bend. But the human remained standing tall, untouched, unshaken. His calmness was more terrifying than any weapon. Zorath whispered through clenched teeth, his voice breaking. "What are you?" His glowing eyes locked on the human's face. Desperate for an answer, the man simply tilted his head, his faint smile deepening. "We are what survives," he said softly. Those words echoed through Zorath's mind like thunder. They carried not just meaning, but weight, a truth that could not be denied. Zorath's body trembled violently, his silver aura flickering like a dying flame. He collapsed fully to one knee, his hand slipping from the human's head, gasping for breath. But the echoes of what he had seen would never leave him. The council sat in stunned silence, their scales, claws, and feathers trembling. The strongest telepath in the galaxy had touched the mind of a single human and was brought to his knees. The truth was undeniable. The human spirit was not fragile. The human spirit was not weak. The human spirit was a force that could not be broken. Breaking point. The hall felt as if time itself had stopped. The silence was so deep that even the faintest sound of breathing echoed like thunder. Zorath, the galaxy's most feared telepath, remained on his knees, his silver skin glistening with sweat, his glowing eyes trembling. The council members shifted nervously, their scaled hands clenching the railings before them, their wings, claws, or tendrils twitching with unease. Never had they seen Zorath falter. Never had they imagined that a single human could bend the will of their greatest psychic warrior. Yet the truth unfolded before their very eyes. Inside the human mind, Zorath had reached a threshold. He had dived deeper than he had ever dared with any creature, searching for weakness, searching for the final key that would allow him to declare control. But the deeper he went, the more unbearable it became. He was no longer looking at simple memories. He was facing the essence of humanity itself, and the raw weight of it threatened to tear him apart. He saw entire civilizations collapse under fire and ruin, yet humans crawled out from the rubble and rebuilt. He saw plagues sweep across their world, killing millions, yet humans fought through sickness and despair, creating cures, rebuilding families, and carrying the memories of the dead forward as lessons. He saw disasters, floods, storms, earthquakes, tear their cities into dust. Yet each time humans rose again, stronger, wiser, unbroken. The endless cycle of suffering and rebirth tore at his spirit. For every moment of despair, there was a rise. For every fall, there was a climb back to the light. It was infinite. It was unstoppable. It was terrifying. Zorath's body shook, his silver aura flaring and collapsing as he tried to hold on. His teeth clenched so hard that cracks formed along his jawline. His psychic energy screamed inside the hall, rattling the stone pillars, bending the flames of the torches. The council gripped their seats, some shielding their faces from the force, yet they refused to look away. This was no longer a test of the human. This was a battle between the pride of the galaxy and the spirit of Earth. The human, still standing calmly, did not move. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths, his faint smile never fading. His eyes looked directly into Zorath's trembling gaze, and in them was not arrogance, not cruelty, but something far more dangerous, pity. That simple look, that quiet calmness, broke through Zorath's final shield. He felt his pride splinter. Then the worst storm of memories struck him. Zorath saw a battlefield drenched in smoke, where a group of human soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, hopelessly outnumbered, knowing death was certain. Yet instead of running, they sang, voices rising together as the enemy closed in. They sang of home, of family, of hope, and though their bodies fell, their song carried on, resonating across the field, striking fear into those who thought they had already won. Zorath felt the song pierce his chest like a blade, and for the first time in centuries, he screamed out loud in the hall. The sound tore through the chamber. High-pitched and raw, the delegates recoiled. Claws over their ears, wings flaring in panic. Zorath clutched his head, his body convulsing, his silver fingers digging into the floor as if to anchor himself to reality. His scream was not just pain, it was terror. It was the cry of a being who had touched something greater than himself and realized he could not survive it. The council leader rose, his golden scales catching the flickering light. His voice thundered across the chamber. "What is happening? Speak, Zorath. What lies in the human mind?" But the telepath could not answer. His body shook violently, his eyes wild, his voice broken into incoherent gasps. He had touched the human spirit, and it was too vast, too heavy, too eternal. The human finally moved. He took a single step forward, his calm eyes never leaving Zorath. He did not raise his hand. He did not strike. He did not threaten. Yet the step alone felt like a mountain crushing the room. The delegates shrank back, some hissed in fear, others lowered their heads. For the first time, they looked at a human not as prey, not as a fragile creature, but as something far beyond their understanding. Zorath collapsed fully to the floor. His hand slipped away, his silver aura flickering into nothing. His chest heaved as if he had been dragged through fire and stone. His eyes dimmed, no longer glowing. He whispered a single word, barely audible, but it echoed across the silent chamber like thunder. "Unbroken," the council gasped. The word carried weight, more than any explanation could. They all understood. Zorath had seen the truth. Humanity was not fragile. Humanity was not weak. They were a storm, a fire, a force that refused to bow. The human stood over Zorath, his faint smile unchanged. He did not gloat. He did not mock. He simply stood there, calm and quiet, as if everything that had just happened was ordinary, as if being unbroken was simply the way of his people. And that calmness terrified the council more than any weapon ever could. The chamber remained frozen in silence. Every delegate knew the galaxy had changed in that moment. Every empire, every ruler, every species that once mocked humans would hear of this day. The day the strongest telepath collapsed. Not because of violence, not because of resistance, but because he could not endure the truth of the human spirit. The council in shock, the great chamber of the council was silent. Yet the silence was not calm. It was heavy, pressing down on every creature seated in the vast tiers of stone and crystal. Hundreds of alien delegates sat frozen, their eyes locked on the sight before them. Zorath, the most feared telepath in the galaxy, lay trembling on the floor, his silver skin pale and glistening with sweat, his glowing eyes dimmed to a weak shimmer. The human stood tall above him, calm and unshaken, a faint smile resting on his lips. He looked almost ordinary, and yet the entire hall felt as if a storm had just torn through it. Whispers finally began to ripple through the chamber. At first they were soft, carried on hushed breaths, but soon they rose into overlapping waves of panic. Some delegates hissed that it was a trick, that the human had used hidden technology. Others shook their heads violently, insisting they had seen the truth with their own eyes. No device had been used, no weapon raised. It was nothing but the human's mind, and that alone had broken Zorath, the council leader. The golden-scaled High Chancellor Virulek stood tall at his throne, his massive wings stretched wide, his reptilian eyes narrowed with both fear and fury. He slammed a clawed hand against the armrest, and the echo silenced the chamber. "Explain," his voice thundered. "Explain what has happened." "Zorath." But Zorath could not answer. His lips trembled. His chest rose and fell in ragged gasps. He clutched his head as if trying to block out the endless storm of memories that still haunted him. His voice cracked barely above a whisper. "They cannot be broken," he rasped. The words sent another wave of unease through the delegates. For if Zorath admitted defeat, then no one could deny the truth. Varolek's scales rippled with agitation. He turned his gaze to the human. His voice lowered, but its sharpness carried across the hall. "What are you?" he demanded. "What power hides in your kind?" The human tilted his head slightly, his expression calm. His voice was soft, yet it carried strength that no translator could dull. "We are not gods," he said. "We are not monsters. We are simply survivors." He let the words hang in the air, simple and unadorned, and yet they struck harder than any threat. The chamber erupted again. This time louder, some shouted in fear, others in anger. A winged delegate shrieked that humanity must be destroyed before their spirits spread across the stars. A scaled warrior snarled that enslaving them was impossible now. A feathered elder whispered that perhaps humanity was chosen by forces beyond comprehension. The arguments grew louder, but beneath it all ran a current of fear. The human did not move. He stood quietly, as if the chaos around him was nothing more than background noise. His eyes wandered across the chamber, and wherever they landed, creatures shifted uncomfortably. Some could not meet his gaze, others lowered their heads. His calmness was worse than rage. For rage they understood, but calm strength unsettled them deeply. High Chancellor Varolek raised his claw again. Silencing the chamber once more, his voice rumbled low, filled with tension. "Zorath," he said, "you have touched their mind. Tell us what you saw." The telepath shook violently. His body curled forward as he struggled to rise. His voice was raw, broken, filled with something that none of the council had ever heard from him before. Fear. "Endless," he whispered. "Pain, fire, hope. Love, grief, strength. It does not end. It does not break. It only grows. Their spirit is an ocean. I drowned." The words spread through the hall like fire. Delegates clutched their robes, their claws, their feathers. Some hissed in denial, others whispered prayers. A heavy truth had fallen on them. Humanity was not fragile prey. Humanity was not weak. They were something else, something that could shake the galaxy. The council leader's eyes burned with both anger and unease. He stared at the human, his golden scales gleaming under the flickering lights. For the first time his voice faltered. "If this is true, then humanity is a threat." The human finally turned his gaze to Varolek, his eyes steady, his faint smile still present. His words came slowly, each one carrying weight. "We are not a threat unless you make us one. We do not seek to rule. We do not seek to enslave. But if you come for us, if you try to crush us, you will learn what your telepath already knows. We cannot be broken." The silence that followed was unbearable. The delegates looked at one another, none willing to speak. The human's words were not shouted, yet they carried more power than any weapon displayed in that chamber. It was not arrogance, it was truth. And truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. Zorath collapsed once more, his strength completely gone. His glowing eyes flickered and then dimmed entirely. He whispered one last word before falling into unconsciousness. "Unbroken." The chamber shook with the weight of it, for even defeated, even destroyed, the greatest telepath had left behind testimony of humanity's spirit. The human stood still, his presence now larger than the hall itself. He did not move, he did not gloat, he simply existed. And that was enough to turn the galaxy's strongest council into silence. In that silence, a realization spread: a single man had done nothing but stand. And yet the galaxy would never be the same. The human speaks, the chamber remained in heavy silence. Every eye was fixed on the human who stood calmly in the center of the grand hall. The strongest telepath in the galaxy had collapsed at his feet, the most feared psychic warrior reduced to trembling whispers. And yet the man had not moved with violence, not raised a hand, not summoned a weapon. He had done nothing but exist, and still the galaxy trembled. The alien council, a gathering of species that ruled empires across countless stars, had expected to see weakness, fragility, something they could laugh at. Instead, they witnessed something they could not explain. The human raised his head slightly, his eyes steady as they swept across the tiers of alien faces. His calmness unsettled them more than any roar of rage could have. He did not look like a conqueror. He did not look like a slave begging for freedom. He looked like someone who had already survived storms far greater than anything this chamber could create, and that truth weighed heavier than chains. His faint smile carried no arrogance, only certainty. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, but it carried through the chamber with a strange power. The translators echoed his words in a dozen alien tongues, and still the weight of the message was clear. "You look at me and wonder what I am," he said. "You wonder what hides in our kind. You wonder why your strongest telepath fell before me." He let his eyes sweep across the chamber once more, pausing on each cluster of delegates. "The answer is simple. We are human." The words sounded almost ordinary, but the silence that followed gave them power. Delegates leaned forward waiting for more. Some scoffed, trying to dismiss the moment. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The human continued. "We are not stronger than you in flesh. We are not faster than you in speed. We are not greater than you in weapons or ships. But there is one thing that we carry, one thing that cannot be measured, one thing that cannot be stolen." He paused and his voice grew firmer. "We endure." A ripple of unease spread across the chamber. The human's eyes shone with a quiet fire as he went on. "We have faced enemies stronger than us, storms greater than us, disasters that should have ended us. And still we rise, we fall. But we rise, we suffer, but we rise. We lose everything. And still we rise again." That is what your telepath saw. That is why he could not stand. For he felt the weight of our spirit, and he realized it cannot be broken. The delegates shifted. Some hissed in disbelief, others bowed their heads as the truth gnawed at them. The High Chancellor's golden eyes narrowed, but even he could not fully hide the unease in his stance. The human took another slow step forward, his presence filling the vast hall. "You rule empires with fear," he said. "You break your enemies with chains. You crush the weak under your boots, but we are different. You cannot break what refuses to stay down. You cannot enslave those who would rather die than bow. That is what we are. That is what we have always been." The words struck harder than any blade. The council chamber trembled not from violence, but from the truth of his voice. It was simple, undeniable, and terrifying. A delegate with wings rose suddenly, her feathers trembling. "If you cannot be broken," she said, her voice filled with both awe and fear, "then what do you want?" The human's calm gaze turned toward her. His reply was steady, his tone unwavering. "We want only to live, to build, to dream. We do not come for conquest. We do not seek thrones. We only seek the freedom to stand, to walk, to endure. But know this," he said, his voice lowering, each word heavy. "If you try to take that from us, if you try to crush us, you will fail, as your telepath failed. For we will not break." The words echoed like thunder through the chamber. Delegates flinched. Some clutched their robes tighter. Others whispered prayers in voices trembling with fear. The High Chancellor gripped the edge of his throne, his claws cutting into the stone. The calmness of the human's voice rattled him more than Zorath's collapse. Rage he could face, defiance he could crush, but this quiet, unshakable certainty was beyond him. The human stepped closer to Zorath, who lay unconscious on the ground. He looked down at him for a moment before lifting his gaze back to the council. "Your strongest has seen the truth," he said. "He called us unbroken, and he was right. Humanity is unbroken. Humanity endures. Humanity rises." For a long moment no one spoke. The silence stretched until it felt like the walls themselves were listening. The alien council, creatures who ruled the galaxy with power and fear, found themselves staring at one unarmed man from a small blue world. And for the first time in memory, they felt something they never thought they would feel. Respect. The human lowered his hands calmly to his sides. His faint smile returned. He did not shout. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood and let the truth of his words linger in the air, a truth that would spread beyond the chamber, beyond the council, across the galaxy itself, a truth that no empire could silence. Humanity could not be broken. The legend begins. The alien council chamber was still as stone. No one dared to breathe too loudly. No one dared to move. The image before them was burned into memory. The strongest telepath of the galaxy collapsed in defeat, his silver skin pale and trembling, while the human stood calm, unbroken, and strangely serene. The moment carried weight far beyond the walls of the council hall, for every delegate knew that what had just happened would spread like fire through the stars, and nothing in the galaxy would remain the same. High Chancellor Verilek's golden eyes narrowed as he studied the human. His massive wings twitched with barely hidden unease. He wanted to roar, to declare this nothing but a trick, but even he, ruler of the council, could not deny what his eyes had seen. He clenched his claws into the stone of his throne, cracks forming under the pressure. His voice finally rumbled across the chamber, low and tense. "This changes everything," he said. The delegates broke into chaos. Their voices filled the hall like a storm. Some shouted that humanity was too dangerous to be left alive. Others argued that if they could not be broken, then perhaps they must be respected. A few whispered in trembling voices that humanity might even be the key to saving the galaxy from threats none of them could face alone. The chamber shook with their arguments, wings flapping, claws striking, voices overlapping until it became nothing but a roar of fear, anger, and confusion. Yet through it all, the human did not move. He stood silently, letting the storm rage around him. His faint smile remained, and his steady gaze roamed over the chaos. He looked not like a conqueror, not like a slave, but like something far more dangerous, an unshakable truth given form. His calmness silenced the chamber more effectively than the High Chancellor's roars ever could. When the noise finally fell, the human spoke again. His voice was steady, soft, yet it carried across the chamber with undeniable force. "You will tell this story," he said. "You will carry it back to your worlds, to your people, and they will ask what happened here. And you will tell them the truth, that a telepath touched a human mind and found no end to it, that he touched our pain and drowned, that he touched our hope and broke. And they will know." His words lingered in the silence like a prophecy. The delegates shifted uneasily. Some could not meet his gaze. Others stared at him with awe. For deep inside, each of them knew the truth. This day would become legend. It would not remain a simple council test. It would spread to every star system, told in whispers in dark cantinas, shouted in the training halls of soldiers, preached in temples, and remembered in the songs of the oppressed. Zorath stirred weakly on the floor. His voice cracked, faint as a dying flame. Yet the entire hall leaned in to hear. "Unbroken," he whispered again. His eyes, dim and hollow, looked up at the human with something no one had ever thought Zorath could feel. Respect. Then his body went limp, slipping into unconsciousness once more. The word hung in the air like thunder. Unbroken. The human lowered his gaze for a moment, then lifted his eyes back to the council. His expression did not change. His voice remained calm. "Remember this," he said. "We did not ask for this trial. We did not seek to prove ourselves to you, but you demanded to know, and now you do. Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not shatter. Humanity endures." The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. The council members shifted in their seats, and for the first time in the galaxy's long history, they did not look at a human as prey or curiosity. They looked at him with caution, with fear, and with something they had never given to his kind before. Respect. High Chancellor Verilek rose from his throne. His golden scales caught the flickering torchlight. His massive form loomed over the chamber, and yet his voice carried less certainty than before. "You will leave this hall," he said. His words measured, "But know this, human. You have changed the galaxy today." The human simply bowed his head slightly. His calm eyes swept once more across the hall, and then he turned, walking slowly toward the chamber doors. Each step echoed loudly in the silence. Each step felt like a drumbeat that carried into the hearts of every alien watching. None dared to stop him. None dared to speak. They simply watched as the man from a small blue planet walked away, leaving behind a legend. Outside the chamber, the corridors of the council's citadel stretched wide. Filled with guards and attendants, they too froze as the human passed, word already racing ahead of him. By the time he stepped into the light of the alien city, whispers had already begun. By the time he reached the shuttle that would return him to Earth, the story had already started to spread, and by the time the stars swallowed his ship, the galaxy was already changing. Across distant worlds, the story would be told in 1,000 ways. Some would speak of the telepath's scream. Others would speak of the human's calm smile. But all would carry the same truth, that humanity could not be broken, that humanity's spirit was vast, endless, and eternal. It would echo through space, carried on ships, in markets, in temples, in battlefields. It would grow with each telling. The details might change, but the core would remain. Humanity endures, humanity rises. Humanity is unbroken, and so the legend began. A single man had stood before the galaxy's greatest council, and without lifting a hand, without raising a weapon, he had shown them a truth that would never be forgotten. From that day forward, when empires spoke of humans, they would not speak of weakness. They would not speak of fragility. They would whisper the words spoken by the broken telepath, a word that would follow humanity across the stars. Unbroken,